Good morning. So, welcome everyone to Stone Creek. This morning, the talk will be offered by Sessei Meg Levy, and I'll let Meg do more. You can fill in the details as you like. I'll just give a brief introduction that both Charlie and I, who are the head priests now at Stone Creek Zen Center, overlapped and lived with Meg and trained together at different parts of the San Francisco Zen Center. Beginning in the 90s, somewhere before any of us had children and were married. And so we've known each other a long time, and our lives have woven together in very sweet ways over the years. Our daughters are a couple years apart, and we're good friends as little people. And Meg has lived for many years in residence at the San Francisco Zen Center, and then brought her offerings of mindfulness and emotional intelligence out into the wider world as well, through the Search Inside Yourself program and other programs. So working with, it sounds like mainly a lot in the corporate world, so bringing the benefits of the Dharma into the marketplace. And this morning, Meg is joining us as a candidate for the head priest position, so succeeding Charlie and I as we leave next summer. So welcome, Meg. Thank you so much for being here.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Sarah. So thank you to you and Charlie and Jisho Roshi for inviting me. As Sarah said, we practiced together at Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, for many years. And then the last 12 years or so, I've been taking the Dharma in different forms out into the world. But Zen is my home, and it's really wonderful to be here and exploring the Dharma with everybody in this way.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I forgot to do the opening chant.
Oh, yes, of course.
So that's in the chat. Forgive me. I
Thank
got
you.
Excited. So you can chant along with us in the chat. The profound and wondrous Dharma is rarely encountered, even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Thank you.
So here we are on screen instead of in person. And let's take a moment actually to fully arrive together. There's an invitation. So wherever you are, and you may have been sitting zazen already, or you may just be joining, taking a moment again to, if you'd like, to resettle in your own place. So taking a moment to feel yourself seated wherever you are, and feeling your feet on the floor with the support of the earth below. Maybe if you'd like, taking a deep breath in, filling, opening, expanding, and then a long breath out. So feeling yourself fully placed where you are. And then also, if you'd like, for a moment, if putting the view onto gallery view, if it's not there in the upper right hand where it says view. And taking this moment as we're settled in our particular place, but we can also open to feel each other's presence in a very real way. That in a very real way, we're in the same place. Just taking a second and looking at the faces. Some of whom you may know very well, some not at all. But to realize that each it's not just a little picture with a head. but there's a whole human being right there. Just opening to that, yeah. And if you will, just to help us feel more connected, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself for just a minute. You have down here on the left-hand side, left bottom, unmute. And just however you'd like, just say hello and good morning all together. Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Good morning.
Hello. They're real people back
Hi
there.
there.
Good morning. Good
So
morning.
happy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. And if you
That's
would, sorry. Yeah. And one more invitation. Just, if we were in the same room together, we could feel each other more. And it's harder through this. But if you feel like it, you can, yeah. Maybe, Sarah, you could mute everybody back if you would, except for me. And in the chat, if you would like to, just 2 words as you really look inward, how are you feeling right now? Just 2 words. How are you feeling? I'm really curious just to feel the room of us all together. 2 words. Two words in the chat. Oh, and the chat is down here on the bottom screen. Yeah. Big hearts, settled, breathing. Very tired and open. Cindy, full and happy. Vicky, good. Thank you. I won't read all of them, but present here, easeful, tender. Andrea, happy, cold. Thomas, warm and curious. Great. Good. Thank you. Warm, receptive, settled, breathing, big hearts. Lovely. Calm and curious from Ed May. Grief, joy, love. 3 words. Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. And I saw something about sound. Are we, maybe raise your thumbs up if we're okay with sound. Are we okay with sound? Okay. Excellent. 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 Thank you. All right. So I'd like to start maybe with a story. And I heard that this story actually happened not too long ago in Turkey, although I'm going to embellish it a bit in the tradition of stories. So there was a man, and he had gone out partying with his friends, and they were having a great time, and it got very late. Maybe he drank a little too much, and he kind of wandered off into the forest. And then he was suddenly very tired, and so he saw this tree, and he just decided to lie down and rest, spend the night there. So he slept, and in the morning, he woke up pretty late in the morning, a little groggy, but got himself up and started to find his way home. And as he was starting to head back, he heard some people in the woods. And he thought, well, I wonder what these people are doing. And so he wandered over there. And he said, what's happening? And they said, well, there's a local man disappeared. He got lost, and we're on a search party. And he said, oh, I'm happy to help. Can I join? And they said, sure, we could really use your help. So they continue through the woods, and they're searching high, searching low, looking for signs. And someone says, well, really, we should call his name because then he'll hear us. And everyone agreed that was a good thing. And so they start calling out, Muleg, Muleg, Muleg. And the man stops. He's very confused. And he says, but I'm here. I'm Muleg. And so he had joined his own search party, looking for himself, unbeknownst to him or anyone else. And so the police take him home kindly, and he gets a good meal and some rest, and there he is. When I heard this, I thought, there's something here. What's here? And of course, there's something about, what we're searching for. We find out, oh, really, we're searching for ourselves. It's us all along. But I wondered also if there's something a little bit deeper. Something about the realization that he was never lost. Was here, was found, kind of all along. So as we're looking for something out there, looking for ourselves, what happens when we realize that we're always here, always found? But there's another way to talk about being lost. And there's a saying, that to find your way, you must first let yourself get lost. You must first let yourself go, or let go of where you think you are, of who you think you are, to surrender to a kind of not knowing how to get home, not knowing what really home is. And in her talk a couple of weeks ago, Jisho Roshi mentioned two kinds of doubt. So there was the corrosive kind of worrying doubt, but then also the doubt of, you could say, inquiry, or what's sometimes referred to as great doubt. And in the Genjo Koan, Dogen says, when Dharma does not fill your body and mind, you think it's already sufficient. When Dharma does not fill your body and mind, you think it's already sufficient. When Dharma fills your body and mind, you understand that something is missing. When Dharma fills your body and mind, you understand that something is missing. So the world as we see it, ourselves, we start to have this suspicion that things may not be exactly as we think they are. Something's missing. It doesn't all add up. Maybe a lack of satisfaction, as the Buddha pointed out in the First Noble Truth. So as we contemplate this, maybe asking yourself, what brings us here today? What brings you here today? So there are other things we could be doing with our Sunday morning, or whatever time it is, wherever you are. And there's community, very important. But why this particular community, right? What is it about this teaching of Zen, of Buddha Dharma, that calls you, that calls us? What was the question, maybe the great doubt that started to arise, that had you step forth and find others asking similar questions? And it can be seen really as a great gift, this doubt. What is this doubt that seeks understanding? I think it's also related to bodhicitta, the sort of beginning thought of awakening, a little candle starting to burn. What calls us? And how do we, once it's arising, take care of it, especially in busy, full lives in a world that doesn't really reinforce that. Can practice and coming together in this way help us listen deeply, to what's arising. In Shakyamuni Buddha, in the original story, realizing that the beautiful and controlled world of the palace, as perfect as his father tried to make it, wasn't really something that he could rely on. And even though we may put a lot of energy into arranging our lives and being secure and making it beautiful, some part of us knows that it's helpful, but it's not something we really can rely on. And often it takes the experience of suffering, and sometimes in a dramatic way, to start someone on the path. A failing, a great loss, someone or something we thought that was solidly there for us suddenly isn't. The erosion of something we assumed would never change. Noticing if there's something in your life experience like that, maybe many things. And in that loss, sometimes we feel lost. And in that confusion, grief, maybe anger, despair, we may start to question, what is real? What is trustworthy? Or as the Buddha offered, given that death alone is certain and the time of death is uncertain, how then shall I live? Given that death alone is certain and the time of death is uncertain, how then shall I live? What does it mean to take this on? To really live into this question? To step away from the palace? To bring this great doubt fully to mind and heart? These ruptures in our life, in our plan, as painful and as disruptive as they can be a great gift. It can be a real opening to practice. And maybe some of us here came to practice because of such a disruption. And I wanted to share a personal story of a time that I felt I was lost, or I got lost. When the ground underneath me suddenly fell away in a way I wasn't expecting. And it was around 2000, and I was at Tassajara, and I had sewn robes for priest ordination. And it was the ceremony was just a couple of months out. It takes a long time to sew the robes, but something wasn't right. And I was 32 years old, and I was deeply committed to Zen practice. And also my heart, body, mind also deeply wanted to be a mother, to have a child. And I was really at war with myself internally. There was this great struggle. And then at some point, I had to go to my teacher, very difficult thing to do, and say, I'm not ready. I can't do this now. It's not the right time. And it was so wrenching inside. And suddenly, all these forms and the practice that I had loved and totally devoted myself to, I just couldn't stand anymore. They just repelled me. We were at Tassajara in the summer, so the forms were it's a monastery, but the forms are a little bit looser. It's a guest season. And so I remember getting up in the mornings to go to the Zendo, and I would put on, my black sitting robes like this, and I would take them right off. And I would put on just plain black clothing. And then I would go and I would sit, and then it would end and we would start to get ready for service, the chanting, the bowing, and I would slip out the back. I couldn't stand to be there after loving it. So to fully let go of the forms, let go of who I thought I was, let go of who I thought I was going to be and what the path was. It was very disorienting. But what I found was, in that lostness, in that not knowing my way, eventually what I discovered was I still wanted to sit. And the basic teachings of Buddha Dharma were still very true for me. And that gave me tremendous confidence. And that's a kind of what I think of as faith. There's a Pali word sada, which is a confidence based in experience in Dharma. So eventually, I was able to come back to the forms, but then I could hold them more lightly and more joyfully. Yeah. And a few years later, when my daughter was 2 years old, I did receive ordination. We may also come to realize that it's not just in these big dramatic losses that we feel these changes, that things are changing all the time. The subtle changes in everything, right? That nothing, in fact, is solid and unchanging. In fact, there's only change. The things that seem to be things are in a process of change, even though they may seem really solid. And so as we open to this, the world may not look any different, but something shifts, something feels a little bit different. And a basic teaching that I come back to again and again, and I find very helpful, that you may be familiar with, is the 3 marks of existence. That's impermanence, anicca, no self or insubstantiality, anatta, and suffering or lack of satisfaction, dukkha. Right? So if we start to realize and open to that things are impermanent, changing, interrelated, that's the nature of it, of everything, including ourselves. And then also related to that, this sense of no self, in the sense of no separate, unchanging essence, including ourselves. this interdependence, interbeing, inter-arising of who we are. And the third, dukkha, or suffering, or lack of satisfaction, one way it's helpful for me to think of it is when we're not in alignment with the first two, that's when we really suffer. Right? We kind of naturally, and it's part of our evolution, we shouldn't feel too bad about it. We see the world as solid and separate and unchanging. And when we assume that's true and we make our decisions and act in that way, we bump hard against reality. Right. So part of the practice is this stepping back and asking, what's really going on here? What is the nature of things? What is the nature of this person I think of as me? And if we open to this flowing of the nature of things, then when there's change, when there's loss, when we realize we can't actually hold on to something, we're not so surprised. We can flow with it a little more easily, maybe. You know, and as Dojin was talking about last week, the sense of grief, it's not that we don't grieve or healthy grieving isn't important or we don't care. We actually can open to care more deeply, I think. But when we really attune more fully to how things are, we can have some space. There's like a deeper peace and understanding that can carry us through. And there are so there are these teachings, but also how do we really integrate these with our world? As Sarah mentioned, I've done some teaching in different environments, which have different words and different forms, but for me, there's underlying Dharma principles in all of it. But there's one program, teaching a 2-day program with people coming in, usually from business, and there's a lunchtime, the first day, and we invite people to have a mindful lunch. Maybe the first 3 bites, really noticing flavors, textures, etc., the sense experience, being present with that. And then the second day for lunch, I like to invite people to do the same thing, but then take it one step deeper. Saying, before you start eating, like, look at that plate and look at what's on your plate. Look at those carrots and ask, how did those carrots get there? Like, seriously, what did it take for those carrots to get there? And of course, there's earth and there's sun and there's water. All those things are necessary for a carrot. But who planted the carrot? How did they get to work? Who cooked them breakfast? Where did the tires on their truck come from? Who made the plate? Who designed the plate that you're eating from? And this, as you start to look at any one thing and start to pull one little thread, it just goes off infinitely. Right? And everything is like this. So how can we say anything is separate? You might even just glance around your space wherever you are right now and pick one object and just do a mini thought experiment. And we can only get such a tiny fraction of what it really takes for that thing to be there. But just find one thing if you'd like. Do a little play, mind play. How did it get there? And another element in exploring this with people, sometimes asking people in an exercise to complete the sentence, Now, one way I depend on others is, and then to keep saying that over and over. And what I found is actually a lot of people have trouble with this, because people come back and say, at first I thought, there's no way I depend on others. I'm very independent. I pride myself on being independent. I've worked hard. I can take care of myself. And then they keep asking. And they start to realize, and I could just see it's a little disorienting. They realize, oh, wow, I'm dependent on others for everything. You can feel the ground shifting under them. I mean, in a way, it seems obvious, but when you really ask, what do I really believe? And of course, there's some cultures, many cultures that are more attuned to this mutuality of support and interdependence. But this narrative of independence has a lot of weight in our world today. And people think they're doing a good thing very sincerely. I'm so independent, I can take care of myself. But then they lose the ground of who they really are and who we are together. So as we open to these kinds of questionings, we may go looking, we may find a Zen center. We might find other people asking similar questions. And if we're lucky, we may let ourselves get lost and find ourselves in a different way. I'd like to share a poem called Lost by a poet named David Wagner. You may know this poem. Stand still. The trees ahead and bushes beside you are not lost. Wherever you are is called here, and you must treat it as a powerful stranger. Must ask permission to know it and be known. The forest breathes. Listen. It answers, I have made this place around you. If you leave it, you may come back again, saying, here. No two trees are the same to raven. No two branches are the same to wren. If what a tree or a bush does is lost on you, you are surely lost. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. Stand still. The forest knows where you are. You must let it find you. Taking this moment and noticing how you're feeling right now. Opening also, if you would like, to the world around you, the living world of many beings. How we are supported and support each other. And asking if there's anything in our exploration today that has touched you or you want to remember. Anything you want to bring into your life going forward. Any ways to get lost or be found. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meg.
Mm.
So usually before we do the closing chant, we have questions, comments, inquiries. And the way that usually works okay to just have people unmute themselves. You can let me know if it would be helpful for me to keep an eye out for folks waving. Yeah. Okay. That sound good to have to you to have some interplay?
Yeah, let's play.
Thank you. So Sangha, please go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
We've been experimenting with not worrying about a pause because there's so much you offered, so knowing it's okay to have the space to digest a little, knowing that you'll know that's not disinterest.
I'm actually going to invite people, if you would like to move, just to stretch a moment, because we've been sitting very still. And it feels like we're shifting into a different way of relating. So we're coming into this. And actually, I'm gonna play with form, if that's all right with you, Sarah. All right. If you would like to, again, all invitation. If there's one thing, short phrase, concept, something that you're curious about or touched you, or that you're taking away, if you feel like putting it in the chat, just so I can get a sense of what landed for people, or what was intriguing, or any ahas or curiosities. Yeah. So hi, can you hold on with just 1 second, Brian, if you don't mind? I'd love for people in the chat just to put in a couple of what touched you, and then I'd love to hear from you, Brian. Thank you. What touched you in the talk, if anything? If not, you say nothing. Just a couple of words. Okay, great. Let the forest come to you. Roberta, Jude, quiet excitement about letting myself be found. Lost and found and lost again. Rosemary, bombard against reality. Journey, calmness, great. Invite threads of support, interconnectedness, awareness of impermanence, death is certain. Yeah, a lot of things here. Yeah, looking for something that's always right here. Yeah, that story. Beautiful. Well, thank you. Thank you for everyone who shared. So turning now to Brian. Thank you for offering your thoughts or questions.
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
Morning.
You brought up a lot of interesting things, but the thing that really stood out to me was your comment about the forest. And so much about my interest in practice was just a sense of being lost. And your comment about the forest reminded me of being lost in the forest. When I was an adult, and I thought I knew where I was, and I got completely lost and started to panic. I was really thrown off, and I really felt like, I had enough outdoor skill or whatever to kind of be okay, and I wasn't okay. And as things went on, and I tried to solve the problem myself, and I got panicked, and I ended up miles from where I thought, I was. And, it was very disturbing. I hadn't thought of that in a long time. Everything worked out. But for that time, I was so thrown off of who I was, that I was trying to find anything recognizable, some kind of signpost. And there was nothing but trees, and there was no forest. So that analogy about practice, and just the comment of seeing the forest for the trees, it just rings so true to me, because for me, practice is about kind of being lost.
Yeah.
Or really being lost, and not being able to see or have a sense that things were okay, because my perception was not correct. And that question is still very alive to me, like all the time. But at least I can recognize it and have some kind of container to place myself, in a way that feels right. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for such a description. And it is such a vivid analogy, like the experience of literally being lost in the forest. But as you were speaking, I totally could map that to times in my own life. Where are the landmarks? I'm miles from where I thought I was supposed to be. How did I get here? So thinking for yourself, like, does that for everyone, does that map that experience? And when we're in the middle of it, what do we do? Thank you for sharing. Other thoughts? Anybody want to talk?
Hello.
Hello.
I've got a question on death. And as I get older and I'm dealing with various health issues, I know I'm in extra innings. But I also feel, as I have for my whole life, that there's a wall of not really feeling presence of death. And I think everybody puts up this wall, and I don't think it's helpful. I think I'm not facing it. And how does one penetrate that?
How do you feel right now asking that question?
Fine. I'm nervous, of course. But, I go about my everyday life as if it's going to continue on. And yet the reality is it's not for everybody. But for me, especially as I get older and deal with health issues and worry about my family and all of that, I feel that I've erected this wall there that's not admitting that, that I'm special, that I'm not going to die.
Yeah. And first of all, just knowing how natural and common that is for our human psyche to do, and a lot of compassion for yourself, like, oh yeah, this is my brain's mechanism for not keeping me feel relatively safe and not too lost. Just what's coming to mind, of course, it's a big question, but I'm thinking of very early Buddhist practices of really going to in that culture, charnel grounds, right? Yeah. And actually consciously putting oneself in a place with reminders of like, oh yeah, I can actually see this, or in the story of the Buddha going out and seeing an older person, a sick person, a corpse, like, oh, there are reminders. And then what happens if we bring that into our meditation, whatever feelings come up with that? And these, in a sense, not just out, of course, of death, but this regenerative nature. So also as we start to let go of some sense of like, I solid me person, even though I feel it that way, I'm going to die and stop. There's a way that as we open into practice, we realize it's often said in Zen in various ways, birth is no birth and death is no death. That, or Suzuki Roshi had the image of it's kind of like the drop in the waterfall kind of coming down, drop, 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 but then it returns to the river. So there are different ways. But I think it's also to bring in the conversation with other people and to explore. And I know, Sarah, you've done work with grief and death and probably also have particular resources and ways of working with it. So again, compassion for yourself and explorations, reminders, and maybe imagining, there's some powerful exercises too, like imagining you are at the end of your life, or what people would write about you and what would you wish, so bringing that into a daily practice in some way. I'm sure it's a much longer conversation, but those are a few offerings. Yeah.
Meg.
Yes.
Hi, my name's Annette, and thank you for bringing yourself to us and opening with your knowledge. One thing in relation to Larry is, and I've been thinking of it at one time, we've had end of life workshops or gatherings at Stone Creek. It goes back a ways now, and I could see where that would be nice to do again. Just ourselves as Buddhists, and just having it as a topic that we can share and keep alive. And what you touched on for me today is the sense of, so you can, I love this. I love the idea of impermanence. I love to hold it lightly, and the sense of life and death, holding lightly. And then when I'm given information that someone I care for is perhaps dying, not even dying, but perhaps this is the disease that will take them, and something grabs me. And it's curious. It's really curious to be with that feeling, that to know the qualities that we can allow us to live lightly, but then to feel the gripping of suffering. So I say to myself, what am I holding to? What am I holding to in this, with this news, with this possibility? So I just wanted to share that's something that you're bringing alive for me today, because it's something I'm holding myself. So thank you very much for being with us today.
No, it's thank you, and it's such a deep and I think universal feeling. And even as we turn towards practice, there's still this rich human life and relationships, and then even in the whole not just feeling the pain of it and the grief of it, but even that extra, like, no, I don't want, no, how to hold that also lightly and allow that it's there. Not even push that away. Thank you.
Hi, my name is David. Thank you for sharing your talk with us today. I just wanted to share something my father said to me. He was a man who had a healthy spiritual practice and became a Methodist minister late in life. And when he was diagnosed with lung cancer, I asked him how he was feeling about death, and dying. He said, well, I was pretty philosophical about it until my own was imminent. And so I just love that from him. And I think it's just has a nice little kernel of lesson in there. So thank you.
Thank you. And of course, it's not something like, oh, well, we practice, so now everything's easy. Right? We just have a bit more ability maybe to engage in a way that allows some freedom in the midst of it all. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, David.
Thank you for your talk today, Meg. It was really, I think we're all, I'm looking at everybody's expressions, and I think we've all been sort of gobsmacked a little bit with what you brought up. And one thing that has been really helpful for me in my practice is just the idea of not censoring or monitoring constantly, like how I'm feeling and how I'm supposed to feel, and oh, I should be blah, blah, blah when this happens. And if I'm feeling this way or acting this way, it's wrong. All that sort of stuff, to just allow whatever's coming up. And I'm just, you brought it before, I think it was with Larry's question, like, what do we do when we're in the middle of it? You know, finding that we're lost. And, you know, it's easy to discuss, yes, we're going to get lost. Yes, we're going to die. Yes, everything's impermanent. But in the moment when our mother or our child dies or our spouse dies and the universe is off its axis completely, even though mentally, practically with our Zen practice, we probably quote unquote know better, it doesn't matter. Because we're completely shaken, completely rocked to the root. And it feels to me like what you were talking about when you were wearing your black clothes to the Zendo and the Tassajara, and then discovered that you still wanted to sit. And you said, I'm going to call that a kind of faith. That's what intrigues me a lot, because it feels to me like a certainty that we're going to have absolutely unmanageable parts of our life. We cannot manage. Everything is shot to pieces. So that faith, I wonder if you would touch on that a tiny bit more of like, what pulls us back? Is it Sangha? Is it brain memory? The aspect of faith that something that compels us to return to what we know has been helpful in the past.
Thank you. Thank you for that articulation, Jude. And let me just ask you, if you don't mind, for you, when the world comes apart on its axis in various ways, where do you go? What calls you, and how do you know it? How do you hear that calling?
Well, that's just it. I feel like I feel like I'm in a vortex, and there's nothing external, quote unquote, calling me. That would be great. I want that. You know, I'd like that external voice of wisdom to be beckoning me to return to a place. I know from habit that sitting helps. I know that. That's sort of like eat when you're hungry, sit when you're crazy, you know?
Right. And there are ways that habit is very powerful. You know, habit sounds like a small word, a habit. Habit in the sense of a place to come back that we've come to know well and can find our way back there. And for me, also the Zen forms and having an altar, you know, having a chanting practice, doing prostrations, that taking refuge, literally saying, I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in Dharma, I take refuge in Sangha. There's something about coming back to these that go beyond, I think, both our mind that's trying to figure everything out and the part that's totally panicked and doesn't know what to do. There's a place that we return to that holds us. And that's why also having a regular and daily practice can create that space back. And so for me, it was, you know, I was fortunate to be in the situation of Tassajara where I was going to sit anyway, because that was the form. But there was some part, it's not just like I should sit, but or I think sitting will still be there, but it was just that experience of, oh, I want to sit. And when I look at what I'm experiencing and I start to listen, how does this fit with the teachings? Just realizing like, oh yeah, it matches up. And so that was that sense of confidence in turning back to these teachings, to these forms. And then there's Sangha, and I've always been struck how in the triple treasure, the three jewels, there's Buddha, there's Dharma, and there's Sangha right up there with the top two. It's right up there in the top three. And it's, we also have good friends, and support each other. And we do this mutually. So those are a few thoughts. We could talk more, but I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, Meg.
Hello,
Roberta.
Roberta. Let me find you. Where are you?
Yeah, I'll wave at you.
Oh.
Thank you so much. I'm just caught on the chat section. Something from Barton Stone, awareness of impermanence changes you. And I do think that was something that I took to heart years ago, starting in practice with probably Vipassana at the time, and I did occasionally go to Green Gulch, and that really registered for me, and it shifted a lot of how I saw my engagement in the world. It didn't fix for me, of course. It doesn't fix my need to fix. I want things to be okay before my death. I want my children's lives to be just smooth and wonderful. I want the world, to be operating from a place of integrity and goodness. And that's likely not to be. And that is more difficult for me to accept, that things are not going to change the way I visualize in a time and space that I'll be able to be present to. So I'm in grief about that even before the reality. And yeah, I mean, I went through something recently with a son who has a traumatic brain injury from a bicycle accident a few years ago. He also lost a child. We lost a 7-year-old Bella this month, some years ago. And the pain of that is, ongoing. It's lessened, of course, but for him and for his partner, the mother, it's a dark place still. They've had another child, Emma, who is 9 years old and amazing, but the loss of Bella is always there and always will be. And so it was hard for him this month, and we were not talking to each other because he was in a very difficult place with himself. So I needed to accept that was okay. As a mom, I do want to fix this, but I can't fix this. I have to let this go. And just be what is, and be with the forest, being present. Be with what is. And it is good to get in touch with that whole sense of awareness of impermanence. Absolutely changes you. And at the same time, it can open you to a deeper sense of your own heart and itself. And that's bigger and more extraordinary than one can imagine, because the defense of that, the barrier to that, is you want to curl up and just make the world go away. But if you actually allow it yourself to be with what is and flow with it, it can be a deepening. And I appreciate what you had to say in your story of what changed for you and how you were able to still get back on the horse and ride it. Thank you.
Thank you for your sharing. It sounds like you, in the midst of all this, also have that sada, that confidence in the practice.
Yes,
Of it all. Yeah.
I have faith too. I mean, I just happen to be blessed with having faith, and that if you return to practice, you return to seeing the light, it will be a good thing.
Thank you.
Meg, can I ask how you're doing?
I'm doing okay. Thank you. Do I seem okay?
Delightfully well. I'm so present. Thank you so much. I wanted to just check in because it's 11:30. We usually go till about 11:30.
Okay. I saw Mary in the chat put something in the chat that I was thinking of including a couple of lines of anyway. Could I just offer them? Let me just try. We'll see if this sounds okay. Just a minute. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad I was like, oh, I wish that people knew how beautiful Meg's voice was. I mean, you can hear it in your speaking voice, but and now they thank you for making that offering. Does that feel complete for this morning? I mean, I know there's many more conversations to be had, but
when you have an opportunity, I have to make an announcement.
oh yeah, we will get to your announcement.
Okay, thank you.
But we'll let's if you feel ready, Meg, we can do the closing chant. Yes.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you. And I'll put that in the chat. For great Bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless, I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible, I vow to end them. Dharma gates are infinite, I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless, I